Okay, well, hello and welcome again to Whisky and Cynicism, another episode of Desert Island Drams. Today, I'm really happy to welcome a friend of mine, Conor O'Keefe, who works down at Nauticus. For those who don't know, it's a neighbourhood bar in Leith in Edinburgh and has a great whisky selection, which Conor curates. So we're just going to have a bit of a catch up about that side of things and, of course, find out what 3 drams he'd take to Desert Island. So, Conor, firstly, welcome. And secondly, how are you and what are you drinking?
Hey, Sam. Thanks. Yeah, I'm good, and I'm drinking tea and whiskey. It's a fucking primo combination. It's a Glen Scotia, so peat and whiskey and tea. It's just absolute favorite.
Very nice. I'm drinking a whiskey and tonic, which should prove how many people actually watch this by the amount of hate mail I'm going to get from it.
Yeah, right.
But it is delicious.
Death, is it?
Yeah. I don't care what the haters say. So I'm going to want to ask you firstly, I mean, I guess similar in the way that I've spent the last decade immersed in a lot of Scotch, but during that time, the Australian whiskey has developed, the industry has developed, and I've been kind of watching from a Scotch perspective, despite it being obviously where I'm from. Irish whiskey has developed hugely in about that same time as well, from being a couple of very large producers to now a huge craft movement and all that. How do you, what do you feel that has developed in Irish whiskey and how it is better or worse than how the Scotch whiskey industry is progressing?
Well, it's obviously changed hugely, like you said, and it's gone from 3 distilleries up to, is it 30 something? There will be shortly. So it's massive. I mean, of course, it's a, as most people know, like we used to be the powerhouse of whiskey and had its pretty poor show in the 20th century, and it's coming back. But like in that time, it's gone from these 2.5 massive producers to just these tiny little guys making stuff in their sheds, and doing really interesting things. So I mean, as far as the distillers, it's everything and anything at the moment. Everyone's making really interesting booze. There, people like Peter Ryan are pulling up old pot still recipes and reviving them. So that, like, things like that are super exciting. On the other side of it, then the whiskey drinkers are finally, like, most people in Ireland, like myself, would have just drank Jameson. So like when you see what people are drinking now and how much they seem to know about it, it's pretty exciting, to be honest. Like the drinkers are more educated. That has its good and bad things, of course, but
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess for those who don't know, I mean, you'll often see pure pots still on a bottle of Irish whiskey, which is mainly because they'll use malted and unmalted barley as opposed to single malt, which you'll see here, which is all has to be all malted barley Scotch. But the other thing that can happen in Irish whiskey, I guess, is the use of a whole range of wood, where in Scotch whiskey you can use, I think it's 14 different types of oak and only those. Whereas I've seen acacia wood and cherry wood and all sorts of things. Now, do you think, is that a gimmick, or do you think there is longevity in using weird and wonderful types of wood to age whiskey?
I mean, I think it's definitely going to be around for a long time. I mean, any kind of innovation like that, or freedom to experiment, is definitely going to set Irish whiskey apart. So that'll be around. But I mean, insofar as how it's been used up to now, I mean, it's maybe a bit early days to tell, really. Like you say, there's been chestnut, acacia, cherry that I've tried, and a couple of others. Hungarian oak is another kind of one I've seen. So like the thing is that they're first fill casks, you know. That's it's how it's always going to be, isn't it? Or how it's going to be initially, anyway. So these are virgin oak or virgin cherry or virgin chestnut, whatever. So you're getting all that, like, normally quite bitter tannic flavor, and lots of wood spice, but you know, you're not getting a fruit or anything like that, as far as I can tell, anyway.
Yeah, probably doesn't do the distillery character much service in the initial stages, but I guess you're right. Down the line, we'll get refill acacia and refill cherry wood and all that kind of thing. I guess that will give us more of an idea how that wood develops and how liquid interacts with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I'm speaking here as a very enthusiastic amateur, so you know, I'll leave it to the people at Jameson to decide how best to use them. But, you know, like in my experience, and I think it seems a bit blunt at the moment. Like the wood spice is interesting and everything, but it's not something I would. You know, I'm not going back for a second dram. Let's be honest.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And speaking of going back to a dram, and I mean, you and I had a long-standing kind of arrangement where through my job I would sell you whiskey at Nauticus that you knew I would then come in and buy and drink myself. So it was quite a nice circular thing we had. But I guess Neighbourhood Whiskey Bar is probably a bit different to a kind of tourist level. On curating that list down there, do you think there's certain things you really need to focus on to keep local and regular drinkers happy?
Yeah, like it's a different game from, like, I used to work in Devil's Advocate, which is a lot more tourist focused, and you know, it was great there, as in you could get almost anything in and you could sell it. You know, tourists will come in, they want to try something new, and they don't care about the price tag a lot of the time, and that's exciting. But in Nauticus, it's a bit, you know, well, it's people like me basically, and people like you who don't have like budgets for £50 drams, you know. So yeah, so you know, it's about making it interesting and keeping the price affordable. So typically it's like under a tenner from pretty much everything, but it means that you're kind of focusing on independent bottlings for the most part, where you get like cheap and interesting whiskey, and just keep it in rotation, you know. The one good thing is that it's because it's a local bar, you can hand sell to people, you know. You can talk to them about the drams and find out what they're really after, and yeah, find out from them, and then be able to suggest and have this conversation, you know. Which is, I think, probably for you as well, my favorite part of bartending is that finding that perfect dram for someone, you know.
Yeah, I guess with, you know, where you can develop a relationship as opposed to you're a tourist for one dram, you get people coming back for countless, and you get to know what they want, which is a whole different type of selling whiskey and talking about whiskey, I guess, because I guess there's a bit more honesty in it to an extent. You know, I mean, if I come in, you're going to tell me there's something that's got way too much sherry and it's overcooked, and therefore I'll probably drink it. But I guess you can be more direct with stuff, and you can look for more linear flavor profiles as well. Indie bottling being a great example of bang for your buck. I know this is going to taste like X and Y, and you quite like Y. So it's I guess there's a genuine way to sell, which is the only way to make sure people keep coming back. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and you know, look, it's fun for me as well, to be honest. And the other guys in the bar, it's just, yeah, it's just fun having that conversation, and having this palette to be able to work with, you know, something that's constantly shifting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great selection down there. But 75 odd malts, I think, is it almost close to 100, and it's kind of good level.
Yeah. It's we keep 100 on the bar, in constant rotation. So, I mean, there's a few grains and a couple of blends in there, but yeah, about 100.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, if that's that conversation is your favorite part of bartending, we're going to introduce a new thing to Design Drams this week, because there's been a lot of whiskey and not much cynicism on these chats in the last few weeks. So what I'm going to ask you is, what annoys you most about the whiskey or the drinks industry? What's your kind of top bugbear with things that happen?
I mean, it's a long list, I'll be honest. You came to the right fella if you want cynicism. No, look, it's, yeah, where to start? I think honest enthusiasm is like all anyone could ask for, you know. So anything outside of that really is kind of grinds my gears a little bit. You know, so, but in particular, I would say online forums, whiskey forums. I spend way too much time on them, and they are the worst. If you want to find the worst of people,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to find lots of pictures of closed bottles, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's whiskey collectors, you know, which I can understand. I can understand the idea. I find myself collecting whiskey, even though I don't try. It happens, and every time I see something new, I'm buying it. You know, it's part of the thrill for me is buying whiskey as much as drinking it. You know, but yeah, I mean, there's the other extreme. For example, I saw a beauty where it was a guy. He was posting on a distillery forum saying that his two batches of his heavy sherry whiskey weren't the same color. It was different batches, and the second batch was a little bit lighter. So he was returning it to the distillery to get a new one.
I was wondering how long it was going to take you to mention the Glendronach Appreciation Society.
I don't know what you're talking about. It was an unnamed distillery.
But yeah, that is fantastic. I love the idea of the distillery kind of having that bottle returned to them, and I'd love to be the fly on the wall to see the reaction when that email came
in. Yeah, I can only imagine. But I mean, I suppose I mean the only thing for everyone who really enjoys drinking the stuff, of course, it's just a shame that there's whiskey in the bottles. You know, like just permanently seal them and sell them to people as collector items. You know, with tea in them or something, and let us drink the business inside. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You'd save on excise as well, wouldn't you? So it's a win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So the other question I have asked everyone who's done this so far is that throughout this weird industry that we all live in, being kind of the drinks industry and the whiskey industry in particular, we're fortunate enough to have some pretty amazing opportunities and some I guess some trips to distilleries and some experiences. What would you say is your favorite ever whiskey moment where you just sat there and realized that you were in a pretty extraordinary position, and it was whiskey that took you there?
You know what? I thought a lot about this actually, because it feels like there's so many moments, and especially, you know, you kind of get wined and dined by brands and stuff, and it's some pretty amazing things. You know, like I've been taken abroad or just to taste some incredible whiskey, but I think I've kind of landed on when I first moved to Australia, which was in about 6 or 7 years ago, and I walked into my pal's bar, and I didn't really drink whiskey at the time. I drank Irish whiskey. I had tasted some Scottish whiskey and I hated it. And then he poured me a Bruichladdich 10. I think it's a finished bottling now, but it was just superb. It just changed my whole concept of what whiskey was. It was my pal who I hadn't seen in a couple of years. Had this incredible drink in my hand that, well, I suppose it's kind of changed my life really in a lot of ways. It's brought me to Scotland for one. But yeah, it was just this. I can still taste it. It's like this buttery, salty, just liquid gold. I absolutely loved it. So that was my that was like I think one of my pinnacles in whiskey.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, some of the kind of very old 40, 50-year-old single cask things I've got to try up at distilleries and whatnot, where at the time it was an amazing kind of experience because you knew how rare it was. I can't remember for the life of me how any of that stuff tastes, but the first time you have a kind of entry-level dram that you really get into, you know, it's a whole different world. But it just goes to show that with a whiskey, it's not about money or age or anything. It's about, I guess, the experience of drinking it most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, it's the same with anything, isn't it? You know, there's many whiskies I've tasted in a hurry, you know, and gone to buy the bottle or whatever, you know, whatever thing it is, and not thought about it again, and then come back to it later when I'm with a friend, and it's like, this is actually amazing, you know. That happens a lot, you know. So it's definitely it's a social thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the company has a lot to do with it. I mean, if you look at things like music, a lot of your favorite songs will be stuff that you were listening to with a certain person at certain times. So I don't think whiskey's any different. I think anyone who thinks it is just a liquid to be kept in a bottle is missing the point, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But speaking of the kind of the news we've all come to see, what if you were to end up on a desert island and you could take 3 drams that you'd be stuck with for the rest of your life? What would those 3 drams be?
I sweated over this more than I should admit. Really, to be honest, it's so hard. It's so hard. Like, man, it was like this was actually going to happen to me. This was really stressed me out. This the most stressful thing that's happened in the last week. So thanks for doing that to me. So I was like cancelling things out at the last minute. I was like, God. But I would say Bushmills Black Bush for starters. It's just such it's a daily dram, isn't it? And it's such high quality and at such a good price. So look, I'm cheap. I'll admit it. I'm more than happy to spend 20 quid on a bottle of whiskey, and I'll be happy with that. So yeah, I mean, I think bang for buck, Bushmills Black Bush, and it's just a daily dram. Another, I would say, is probably Springbank 12. I like Springbank. I think one of the things I like most about it is that it seems to change a lot. It's kind of inconsistent, especially the 12. I just feel like it's in the opposite way to the Black Bush. It's something that's kind of rarely the same twice. And I just love that. I mean, if you're going to choose one bottle to take away with you forever, it might as well be one that's never the same twice. So I think that's a fair one. And then I had a Clynelish from Cairnmore, Celebration of the Cask, a year or two ago, and it just kind of stuck with me. It's not gone away. It was, what everyone says about Clynelish, it's waxiness, and it was chewy and it kind of coated my mouth, and just stewed fruits and all those kind of all the tasting notes you get from a sherry Clynelish, right? It's I'll read them off the back of the bottle basically, but it was superb, absolutely superb.
I mean, a good Clynelish is something beauty, but it's really interesting. Of all the people who have done this, and obviously people who have drunk a lot of whiskey and been in the industry, no one's picked a bottle over maybe 200 quid, and even then it's all been like 100 quid or less kind of thing. So and I was honestly expecting this to be just everyone picking 3 of the most obscure and like pointless drams that no one else would ever try. So it's really refreshing that everyone's gone with mostly core range, mostly kind of accessible bottlings, and the odd kind of one-off like that Carnmore, which we've all got those odd bottles that we know we should have probably bought more of when we could have. Yeah. But it's nice to see that we all kind of do think in normal whiskey terms, despite the fact that I didn't say you had to pay for these drams to this island.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we can go again. Yeah, okay. I think I don't know. I think there's something as well about like these super rare special bottles, that sometimes maybe they're a bit too precious, and you just almost feel like you can't just relax and enjoy them, just that they're in such short supply or so rare, that it seems a shame to just knock it back on a Tuesday night,
Yeah, but I think we've all done that over the years.
Yeah.
I know, Conor. Thank you so much for your time, mate. It's really interesting and great to hear Desert Island Drams. And I'll let you get back to your cup of tea, and I'll continue my blasphemy with a whiskey and tonic. But thanks again, mate, and Slanjava.
It's a pleasure. Slanjava.